The shuttle was packed with people. Jack Morrison stood near the door, holding the metal rail as the vehicle moved through the station. It was the end of the work shift and everyone wanted to get home. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and sweat. People pressed close together, tired and quiet. Jack worked in the freight bay of Outpost Epsilon 7. He spent his days loading and unloading cargo containers. The work was hard, but he didn't mind. It gave him time to think. His father had raised him to be a simple man with simple values. Treat people right. Do your job well. Don't cause trouble. The shuttle doors opened at the next stop. A few people got off. Then she stepped on. Jack saw her immediately. She was tall, taller than most humans. Her skin was covered in scales that shifted between deep purple and silver. When the light hit them, she had 4 fingers on each hand and large amber eyes that seemed to glow slightly. She was Vrixian. The change in the shuttle was instant. Conversation stopped. People shifted away from the door. Jack watched as passengers who had been relaxed suddenly became tense. A woman near him pulled her child closer. A Krellian merchant made a hissing sound under his breath. The Vrixian woman moved down the aisle slowly. She carried a small bag and wore a simple gray uniform that marked her as a station worker. Her face showed no emotion, but Jack noticed how stiff her movements were, like someone who expected trouble and was ready for it. She approached an empty seat next to an older human man. The man looked at her, then quickly put his bag on the seat and turned to face the window. The Vrixian woman paused for just a moment, then moved on. The same thing happened at the next empty seat. A Xanthari woman saw her coming and spread her packages across both seats. She didn't even look up, just pretended to be very busy arranging her things. Jack felt something uncomfortable twist in his stomach. He had seen this kind of thing before back on Earth. Different reasons, different targets, but the same ugly behavior. The casual cruelty of it made him angry. The Vrixian woman kept walking. She didn't complain or protest. She just moved down the aisle looking for somewhere to sit. Her amber eyes scanned each row, and each time she found the same result. Turned backs, filled seats, cold silence. She was getting closer to where Jack stood. He had grabbed a seat near the back when he first got on. The seat beside him was empty. He watched her approach and made a decision. When she reached his row, Jack looked directly at her. Their eyes met. He saw surprise there, like she expected him to look away. Instead, he lifted his hand and gestured to the empty seat beside him. The shuttle got even quieter. Jack felt eyes on him now. He heard someone behind him mutter something he couldn't quite make out. The Krellian merchant from earlier leaned forward. "Human," the Krellian said, his voice low and harsh. "You know what she is, yes? Vrixian, not safe, not to be trusted." Jack looked at the merchant. "I know she needs a seat," he said quietly. "Same as anyone else." The Vrixian woman stood very still. Jack could see her hands gripping her bag tightly. She was waiting for something, probably for him to change his mind or for this to be some kind of joke. "It's okay," Jack said to her. "Please sit down." She hesitated for another second, then slowly lowered herself into the seat. She sat carefully, keeping her bag on her lap, taking up as little space as possible. Jack noticed she kept her arms close to her body, like she was trying to make herself smaller. The shuttle started moving again. The low hum of the engine filled the silence. Jack stared straight ahead, aware of the disapproving looks from other passengers. A human woman across the aisle shook her head at him. The Krellian made another hissing sound. Beside him, the Vrixian woman sat rigid. Jack could feel the tension coming off her in waves. He didn't blame her. She had probably dealt with this kind of treatment every single day since arriving at the station. They rode in silence for a few minutes. Jack noticed small things about her. Her scales reflected the shuttle lights in interesting patterns. Her breathing was slow and controlled. Her amber eyes were fixed on a point in front of her, not looking at anyone. The shuttle made 2 more stops. People got on and off. Nobody sat near them. There were other empty seats now, but passengers chose to stand rather than sit close to the Vrixian woman. Jack felt that uncomfortable twist in his stomach again. How did people get like this? So afraid of someone different that they couldn't even share a seat on a shuttle? His father's voice came back to him. Words from years ago when Jack had been a boy. "Doesn't matter what someone looks like or where they come from," his father had said. "What matters is how they act and how you treat them. You judge the person, not the group." The shuttle was starting to warm up. Too many bodies in too small a space. Jack shifted slightly in his seat. Recycled air in these things is terrible, he said. Not really to anyone in particular. Makes everyone cranky. He wasn't sure why he said it. Maybe just to break the silence. Maybe to show her that he wasn't afraid to talk to her like a normal person. The Vrixian woman turned her head slightly, not looking at him directly, but acknowledging that he had spoken. For a long moment she didn't respond. Then, in a voice so quiet he almost missed it, she said, "Yes, the environmental systems are old." Her voice was different from human voices, deeper, with an unusual resonance to it, but the words were clear and her accent was slight. "I work in the freight bay," Jack said, "down on level 9. The air is even worse there. Smells like fuel and metal." "I work in the research lab," she replied. "Level 4. The air is filtered better there, but it is very cold." It was the most ordinary conversation, just two workers talking about their jobs, but Jack could feel the weight of it. The other passengers were listening, some with curiosity, some with clear disapproval. The shuttle reached the residential sector. This was Jack's stop. He stood up, grabbing his small pack from under the seat. The Vrixian woman didn't move. This wasn't her stop yet. Jack paused before leaving. He looked at her and gave a small nod. "Have a good evening," he said. She looked up at him, and for the first time he saw something other than careful blankness in her face. Surprise, maybe even gratitude. "You as well," she said softly. Jack got off the shuttle and walked toward his small quarters. Behind him, the shuttle doors closed and the vehicle moved on. He didn't think much about the encounter as he made dinner and prepared for sleep. It had just seemed like the right thing to do, the human thing to do. But for Kalara, the Vrixian woman on the shuttle, the moment stayed with her. She sat in her empty quarters that night, thinking about the human who had offered her a seat. The human who had spoken to her like she was just another person. It had been months since anyone had shown her simple kindness. Months of cold shoulders and hostile stares. Months of eating alone and working in isolation. One small gesture, one offered seat. It shouldn't have meant so much. But it did. It meant that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in this station saw her as a monster. Not everyone judged her for the sins of her ancestors. For the first time in a long time, Kalara went to sleep with something that felt almost like hope. Jack saw her again 3 days later in the station cafeteria. He was grabbing lunch between shifts, tired and hungry. The cafeteria was crowded, as it always was during the midday rush. Workers from all over the station came here to eat. He spotted her standing alone near the drink dispensers. She held a tray with food on it and was looking around the room. Every table was full or nearly full, but Jack noticed something. Wherever there was an empty seat, people seemed to lean in closer, spreading out their belongings, making it clear no one was welcome to join them, not when it came to her. Jack was sitting at a table with his friend Greg Sullivan and 2 other freight workers. There was one empty chair. He caught Kalara's eye and nodded toward it. Greg stopped eating mid-bite. "Jack, what are you doing?" he said quietly. "She needs somewhere to sit," Jack said simply. The other 2 workers exchanged glances. One of them, a woman named Amy, pushed her chair back slightly. "I need to get back to work anyway," she muttered, even though her meal was only half finished. She left quickly. Kalara approached slowly, like she was walking toward something dangerous. "May I sit here?" she asked, her deep voice careful. "Of course," Jack said. "Please." She sat down, placing her tray gently on the table. The remaining freight worker, a young man named Carlos, finished his food in 3 quick bites and left without saying goodbye. Greg stayed, but he looked uncomfortable. He kept glancing at Kalara, then at Jack, then back at his food. The silence at their table was heavy. "I remember you from the shuttle," Kalara said to Jack. "A few days ago, you offered me a seat." "Yeah," Jack said. "Jack Morrison. I work in freight." "Kalara of House Theron," she replied. "I work in the biochemical research lab." Greg looked up at that. "Research? What kind of research?" Kalara hesitated, like she wasn't sure if he was asking out of real interest or looking for something to criticize. "Protein synthesis," she said finally. "Finding ways to produce sustainable food sources for deep space colonies. Places where traditional farming is not possible." "That sounds important," Jack said. "It is," Kalara said quietly. "Many colonies struggle with food security. If we can develop efficient protein synthesis, we can help thousands of beings." Greg didn't say anything more. He finished his meal and left with a brief nod to Jack. Jack could tell his friend didn't approve, but at least Greg hadn't been rude. Now it was just Jack and Clara at the table. Around them, the cafeteria buzzed with conversation and the clatter of trays, but their table felt like an island of quiet. "You don't have to do this," Clara said suddenly. "I understand if you would prefer I eat elsewhere." "I don't want to cause problems for you." Jack looked at her. "You're not causing problems. You're just eating lunch." "But your friends left," she pointed out. "They had to get back to work," Jack said, though he knew it wasn't entirely true. "And they're not really friends, just co-workers." Clara studied him for a moment with those large amber eyes. "Why are you kind to me?" "Most humans here avoid me like the others do." Jack thought about how to answer. "My father taught me to treat people with respect," he said. "Doesn't matter what they look like or where they come from. Matters how they act." "And how do I act?" Clara asked. "Like someone doing good work," Jack said. "Like someone who wants to help people. That's enough for me." For a moment, Clara said nothing. Then she began to eat her meal. Jack did the same. They didn't talk much more, just shared the space. But it felt comfortable. Normal. Over the next 2 weeks, Jack and Clara kept running into each other. At first it seemed like coincidence. The cafeteria. The shuttle. The supply distribution center. But then Jack realized she was timing her movements to cross paths with him, and he realized he was doing the same thing. They started having real conversations. Clara told him about her homeworld, a planet called Vrixia Prime. She described cities built into mountain ranges and oceans that reflected violet light from their sun. She talked about her family, her mother who was a teacher and her father who worked in environmental restoration. Jack told her about Earth, about growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, about losing his mother to cancer when he was 15, about his father who had worked in construction and taught Jack the value of hard work and fair treatment. One night, Jack couldn't sleep. The station's night cycle was always too bright for him. He wandered to the observation deck, a large room with windows looking out into space. He thought he would be alone, but Clara was there standing at one of the viewing ports. The stars reflected in her scales, making them shimmer like liquid metal. "Can't sleep either?" Jack asked. She turned startled. Then she relaxed when she saw it was him. "No, I often come here at night. It's peaceful." Jack joined her at the window. They stood side by side, looking at the endless darkness dotted with distant lights. "Out here, the problems of the station seem smaller." "Can I ask you something?" Jack said after a while. "Yes," Clara said. "The Vrixian Wars. The history everyone talks about. Is it true what they say? That your people conquered other systems?" Clara was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally. 200 years ago, my people did terrible things. We were desperate and afraid. Our world was dying, resources were gone. We thought we had to take from others to survive. We were wrong." "What happened?" Jack asked. "Our empire collapsed from within. Civil war. Millions died. When it was over, we had to rebuild everything. We chose a different path. Peace, science, restoration. But the galaxy has not forgotten what we were. They see my scales and they see monsters from old stories." Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the pain underneath. "I was not alive when those wars happened. Neither were my parents. But I carry the weight of that history every day, every time someone moves away from me, every time I am denied service, every time I eat alone." Jack didn't know what to say. What could he say? That it wasn't fair? It wasn't, but that didn't make it hurt less. "My people have spent 2 centuries trying to make amends," Clara continued. "We have given aid to the worlds we harmed. We have opened our research to everyone. We have become peaceful. But it is not enough. It will never be enough for some people. It's enough for me," Jack said quietly. "You're not your ancestors. You're just you. Clara, a scientist trying to help people. That's who I see." Clara turned to look at him. In the dim light of the observation deck, her amber eyes seemed to glow. "Thank you," she said softly. "You cannot know how much that means to me." They stood together in silence for a while longer, watching the stars. 2 people from different worlds finding common ground in the darkness of space. When they finally left the observation deck, something had changed between them. They weren't just being polite to each other anymore. They were becoming friends. And on a space station where Clara had felt completely alone for months, that friendship was like finding light in the darkness. The trouble started with Thane Korax. He was a Krellian merchant who owned several businesses on the station. He was rich and had many friends in important places. He was also loud about his opinions, especially when it came to Vrixians. Jack first heard the rumors during his lunch break. Greg pulled him aside in the freight bay looking worried. "Jack, you need to hear this," Greg said. "Corax is spreading stories about your Vrixian friend, about Kalara." "What kind of stories?" Jack asked, though he felt his stomach tighten. "He's saying her research is suspicious, that she might be developing weapons, not food. He's telling people she's dangerous." Jack felt anger rise in his chest. "That's nonsense. Her work is about protein synthesis. I've talked to her about it." Greg shrugged. "I know, but people are listening to him. He's got influence, and people already don't trust Vrixians." Over the next few days, Jack watched the rumors spread like fire. People whispered in corridors. They stared at Kalara with new suspicion in their eyes. Station security started showing up near the research lab more often. Jack tried to tell people the truth. He explained what Kalara was really working on, but most people didn't want to listen. They wanted to believe the scary story instead. It came to a head one afternoon in the cafeteria. Jack was getting coffee when he heard raised voices. He turned to see Corax standing at Kalara's table. She was alone, as usual, but now Corax had brought several other people with him. "You should not be here," Corax was saying, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "This station is not safe with you on it." Kalara sat very still. Her face showed no emotion, but Jack could see her hands gripping the edge of the table. "I have done nothing wrong," she said quietly. "Nothing wrong?" Corax laughed, but it wasn't a nice sound. "You are Vrixian. Your kind killed millions, and now you work in a lab playing with chemicals. Who knows what you are really making?" People in the cafeteria were watching now. Most looked uncomfortable, but nobody moved to help. They just watched like it was entertainment. Jack put down his coffee and walked over. "That's enough," he said. Corax turned to him. "Ah, the human who sits with monsters. Tell me, do you know what she does in that lab? Have you seen her research?" "She's developing sustainable food sources," Jack said calmly. "Protein synthesis for colonies that can't grow their own food. That's not a weapon. That's helping people." "So she says," Corax hissed. "But how do we know? How do we know she is not lying? Like her ancestors lied before they attacked." "Because she's not her ancestors," Jack said, his voice getting harder. "She's herself. And you have no proof of anything except your own fear." The cafeteria had gone completely quiet. Corax's face twisted with anger. "You are a fool," he said to Jack. "A naive fool who will get us all killed." "And you're a coward," Jack replied. "Bullying someone who sits alone. Making up stories because you're too scared to actually look at the truth." For a moment, Jack thought Corax might attack him. The Krellian stepped forward, his hands balled into fists. But then a voice cut through the tension. "That's enough from everyone." Commander Lisa Chen stood in the cafeteria doorway. She was the station's second-in-command, responsible for daily operations. She looked at Corax, then at Jack, then at Kalara. "Corax, you will come with me," Chen said. "We need to discuss appropriate behavior on this station." Corax glared at Jack one more time, then followed Chen out. His friends scattered quickly, not wanting to be associated with the trouble. The cafeteria slowly came back to life. People returned to their meals and conversations, but Jack noticed they were still watching him and Kalara. He sat down across from her. "Are you okay?" he asked. Kalara nodded slowly. Her hands were shaking slightly. "Thank you," she said. "But you should not have done that. Now they will target you too." "Let them," Jack said. "Someone had to say something. Why?" Kalara asked. "Why risk yourself for me?" Jack thought about it. "Because it's not just about you anymore," he said finally. "It's about what kind of place this station is. Do we let bullies spread lies? Do we let fear control us? Or do we stand up for what's right?" Kalara looked at him for a long moment. "You are a good person, Jack Morrison," she said quietly. "I'm just a freight worker," Jack said. "No," Kalara said. "You are more than that." But the trouble didn't end there. Over the next week, things got worse. Jack noticed his co-workers avoiding him. Some people stopped talking to him entirely. He got assigned the worst jobs in the freight bay, the ones nobody wanted. Kalara had it even harder. Station security started investigating her work. They asked her questions and searched her lab. They demanded to see all her research notes and experiment results. She showed them everything. She had nothing to hide. Her work was exactly what she said it was. But the investigation continued anyway. One night, Jack found Kalara on the observation deck again. She was standing at the window, but she wasn't looking at the stars. She was just standing there, her shoulders slumped. "Hey," Jack said softly. She turned. In the dim light, he could see she had been crying. Phyrexian tears were clear and thick like glycerin. They left shining tracks down her scaled cheeks. "I think I should leave," Kalara said. "Leave the station. It would be easier for everyone." "No," Jack said firmly. "Don't let them win." "I'm so tired, Jack," she said, her voice breaking. "Tired of fighting. Tired of being hated for things I did not do. Sometimes I think they are right. Maybe I am a monster just for being born Phyrexian." Jack walked over to her. He wanted to put a hand on her shoulder to comfort her, but he wasn't sure if that would be appropriate. "You're not a monster," he said instead. "You're one of the best people I've met on this station. Don't let their fear make you doubt yourself." Kalara wiped her eyes. "You have lost friends because of me," she said. "Your co-workers treat you badly now. This is not fair to you." "Life isn't fair," Jack said. "But that doesn't mean we stop trying to do the right thing. Stay, please. Things will get better." "How can you be sure?" Kalara asked. Jack smiled slightly. "I can't, but I believe it anyway. And I'm not giving up, so you shouldn't either." Kalara looked at him, then back out at the stars. "All right," she said finally. "I will stay. For now." It was a small victory, but on a station filled with suspicion and fear, small victories were all they had. Jack didn't give up. He started doing research in his free time, reading about Phyrexian history on the station's computer network. He found things that surprised him, things that most people didn't know or had forgotten. The Phyrexians hadn't just been conquerors. After their empire fell, they had spent decades helping rebuild the worlds they had damaged. They had shared medical technology that saved millions of lives. They had developed water purification systems still used across the galaxy. But these contributions were rarely mentioned in the history books. The wars were remembered. The help was forgotten. Jack started sharing what he learned. He talked to his coworkers during breaks. He left information files in the common areas. Most people ignored him. Some told him to stop wasting his time, but a few listened. Greg was one of them. He showed up at Jack's quarters one evening looking uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" Greg asked. Jack let him in, surprised. They hadn't talked much since the cafeteria incident. "I've been thinking," Greg said, sitting down heavily. "About what you said. About Kalara. And I did some reading. Her published papers. They're really good, Jack. Like brilliant. She's trying to solve real problems." Jack felt relief wash over him. "I know," he said. "I was wrong," Greg continued. "I let other people's fear become my fear. I didn't even try to see her as a person. I just saw the scales and the history and I shut down my brain." "So what changed?" Jack asked. Greg shrugged. "You, I guess. You keep defending her even when it costs you. Made me think maybe I was missing something. So I looked. And I was." "Thanks for telling me," Jack said. "I want to help," Greg said. "If you'll let me. I know a lot of people on this station. Maybe I can talk to them. Share what I learned," Jack smiled. "Yeah, that would be great." Things started to shift slowly. More people began questioning Corax's accusations. The security investigation found nothing suspicious in Kalara's work. In fact, they found it was even more important than most people realized. Her protein synthesis could help struggling colonies across 3 sectors. Then came the crisis in the hydroponics bay. It started with a few sick plants. Then more. Within hours, the entire bay was infected with some kind of fungal contamination. The hydroponics bay grew most of the fresh food for the station. If it failed, they would be stuck eating freeze-dried rations for months while waiting for supply ships. The station's botanists tried everything they knew. Nothing worked. The fungus kept spreading. Commander Chen called an emergency meeting of anyone with biological expertise. Kalara showed up, even though she hadn't been specifically invited. The botanist looked uncomfortable when she entered the room. But Chen nodded at her. "We need all the help we can get," the commander said. Kalara examined samples of the contaminated plants. She asked questions. She ran tests. And within 2 hours she had identified the problem and developed a solution. "It is a strain of terrestrial blue mold," she explained. "Modified probably by mutation during space transport. Your standard antifungals won't work because the mold has adapted, but I can synthesize a targeted enzyme that will break down its cellular structure without harming the plants. The head botanist, a human woman named Rachel, looked skeptical. How long will that take? 6 hours, Clara said. If I can use the research lab equipment, do it, Chen ordered. Jack helped Clara carry equipment from her lab to the hydroponics bay. Other station workers watched them work. Nobody offered to help, but nobody tried to stop them either. Clara worked through the night. Jack stayed with her, fetching things she needed, helping however he could. He watched her move through the work with precise efficiency. This was what she was meant to do. This was who she really was. There, Clara said finally, holding up a container of clear liquid. This should work. They applied the enzyme to the infected plants. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then the fungus began to shrivel and die. The plants beneath started to recover, their leaves turning from brown back to green. Rachel came to examine the results. She ran her own tests. Then she looked at Clara with new respect. It's working, she said. You saved our crops. I was glad to help, Clara said quietly. News of what happened spread quickly through the station. People who had watched Clara work saw her skill and dedication. They saw how she had helped without hesitation, even after how badly they had treated her. Corax tried one last time to stir up trouble. He claimed the contamination had been deliberate, that Clara had caused it to make herself look like a hero. But this time nobody believed him. The security logs showed the contamination was natural. The timing was just coincidence. Commander Chen called Corax to her office. What was said there remained private, but afterward Corax was much quieter. His accusations stopped. A week later, Chen made an announcement over the station-wide communication system. The investigation into Clara's work was officially closed. No wrongdoing had been found. In fact, Chen commended Clara for her professionalism and her quick action during the hydroponics crisis. Jack was working in the freight bay when he heard the announcement. Greg was nearby and they shared a smile. You did it, Greg said. You actually changed things. We did it, Jack corrected. A lot of people helped. That evening, Jack found Clara on the observation deck. She was standing at their usual spot, looking out at the stars. But this time she wasn't alone. Rachel from the hydroponics bay was there too, talking with her about plant biology. When Rachel left, Jack took her place beside Clara. Things are changing, Clara said softly. People are talking to me now. Not everyone, but some. It's a start, Jack said. More than a start, Clara said. She turned to look at him. It is hope, real hope. I had forgotten what that felt like. You never gave up, Jack said, even when things were worst. You kept working, kept trying to help. That's why people are starting to see the truth. I wanted to give up, Clara admitted, many times. But you wouldn't let me. You kept believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Jack didn't know what to say to that. He just stood beside her, watching the stars, grateful that she had stayed, grateful that things were finally getting better. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Prejudice didn't disappear overnight. There would still be people who feared and distrusted Vrixians. But now there were also people who were willing to question that fear, willing to look past scales and history to see the person beneath. And that was how real change always started. One person at a time, one choice at a time, one offered seat that became a friendship that became a movement. 3 months passed. The station slowly transformed. The changes were small at first, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. But Jack noticed. He noticed everything. Clara no longer ate alone in the cafeteria. Rachel from hydroponics joined her sometimes. So did a few of the younger researchers. Greg started sitting with them too, asking Clara questions about her work. People still stared sometimes. But the stares were different now. More curious than hostile, more interested than afraid. Word had spread beyond the station. The human government heard about what happened at Outpost Epsilon 7. They heard about the Vrixian scientist who saved the station's food supply. They heard about the friendship between species that had helped change attitudes. One morning, an official ship docked at the station. Ambassador Nina Torres came aboard with a small team of diplomats and observers. She wanted to see the station for herself. Commander Chen gave her a tour. Jack was called away from his work to meet with them. He felt nervous in his work clothes, standing in front of these important people in their formal uniforms. "Mr. Morrison," Ambassador Torres said, shaking his hand. "I've heard a lot about you, about what you started here." "I didn't start anything," Jack said, uncomfortable with the attention. "I just offered someone a seat." The ambassador smiled. "Sometimes that's all it takes. One small act of kindness that grows into something bigger." They asked him questions about Kalara, about the station, about how things had changed. Jack answered honestly. He told them it wasn't perfect. Some people still avoided Kalara. Korax had left the station, but there were others who shared his views. "But it's better," Jack said. "People are trying. That's what matters." The ambassador met with Kalara next. They talked for over an hour. When they emerged, Torres looked impressed. That evening, Chen called a station-wide meeting. Everyone gathered in the main assembly hall. Jack stood near the back with Greg. Kalara was up front with the researchers. Commander Chen stepped up to the podium. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "I want to address something that has been happening on this station. Something we should have addressed much sooner." The hall went quiet. Chen continued. "When Kalara arrived at this station 6 months ago, we failed her. We allowed prejudice to dictate how she was treated. We stood by while she was isolated and harassed. That was wrong. I was wrong for not stopping it sooner." Jack saw Kalara's surprise. She clearly hadn't expected this. "Kalara has proven herself to be an exceptional scientist and a valuable member of this community," Chen said. "She saved our hydroponics bay. Her research could help millions of people across the galaxy. But more than that, she showed us grace and professionalism even when we showed her nothing but suspicion." Chen paused, looking out at the assembled crew. "This station is supposed to represent the best of what we can be, a place where different species work together. We failed at that, but we can do better. We will do better." She announced new policies: mandatory diversity training for all personnel, a formal complaint process for discrimination, regular cultural exchange programs. Small changes, but important ones. Then came the big announcement. Kalara's research has been recognized by the Interstellar Science Council. She has been awarded a major grant to expand her work. 3 other Vrixian scientists will be joining her here to form a proper research team. The hall erupted in applause. Not everyone clapped, but most did. Jack saw Kalara stand up, clearly overwhelmed. Chen gestured for her to come to the podium. Kalara walked up slowly. She stood behind the podium, looking out at the crowd. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak. "Thank you," she finally said, her deep voice carrying through the hall. "I came to this station expecting nothing. I had been to other stations, other places, and always found the same cold reception. I thought that was just how it would be." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But one person showed me kindness. One person treated me like I mattered. That changed everything. It showed me that change is possible. That understanding is possible." Her eyes found Jack in the crowd. "Thank you, Jack Morrison, for seeing me when others would not, for standing beside me when it would have been easier to walk away." Jack felt his face get hot. Everyone was looking at him now. He nodded at Kalara, not knowing what else to do. After the meeting, Ambassador Torres approached Jack again. "We'd like to create a new position on this station," she said. "Cultural liaison. Someone to help facilitate better understanding between species. We think you'd be perfect for it." Jack blinked. "I'm just a freight worker," he said. "You're someone who understands that respect and kindness matter more than differences," Torres said. "That's exactly what we need." Jack thought about it. He liked his work in the freight bay. It was simple and honest. But he thought about Kalara, about everything that had happened. Maybe he could help others avoid what she had gone through. "All right," he said. "I'll try." A week later, Jack stood on a shuttle heading back to the residential sector. It was the same route he had taken that first day. The same crowded shuttle with tired workers heading home. The doors opened at a stop and a Vrixian woman stepped on. She was younger than Kalara, with lighter scales. One of the new scientists joining the research team. Jack watched carefully, ready to offer his seat if needed. But something different happened. A human woman near the front gestured to an empty seat beside her. "Here," she said simply. The Vrixian scientist looked surprised but grateful. She sat down. Across the aisle, a Xanthari worker nodded at them both in greeting. 2 rows back, Greg was chatting casually with another passenger, acting like this was the most normal thing in the world, because it was normal. Or at least it was becoming normal. Jack caught Kalara's eye from where she sat a few rows away. She had been watching, too. They shared a small smile. No words needed. The shuttle moved through the station, carrying its passengers home. Outside the windows, the station gleamed against the darkness of space. Just a small outpost on the edge of known territory. Nothing special. But inside, something important was happening. People from different worlds were learning to see past their fears, learning to judge individuals rather than groups, learning that kindness was stronger than prejudice. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems to solve, still minds to change. Change was slow and difficult and sometimes painful. But it was happening. One person at a time, one choice at a time, one offered seat that had become something much bigger. Jack looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there were billions of beings from thousands of species. Most of them would never meet each other. But maybe, just maybe, stories like this one would spread. Stories about choosing kindness over fear, about seeing the person instead of the label. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, Jack thought. Not superior weapons or technology, not physical strength or ancient wisdom, just the simple, stubborn belief that everyone deserved dignity. That everyone deserved a chance. That a person's worth wasn't determined by their species or their history, but by their actions and their character. The shuttle reached his stop. Jack stood up, nodding goodbye to Kalara as he passed. She smiled back, truly smiled in a way she never had when they first met. He stepped off the shuttle and headed toward his quarters. Tomorrow he would start his new job. There would be challenges ahead. More prejudice to confront, more bridges to build. But tonight he felt hopeful. Real, solid hope because he had learned something important. Change was possible. Understanding was possible. All it took was someone willing to offer a seat. Someone willing to see another person and say, "You belong here too."